Today on r/malicious compliance. You are not to take the company phone and hardware wherever you go. Sure, okay. End up spending $6K to get those to me in an emergency. Previous job, worked in a company that was regulated by multiple powerful government agencies. When they ask for something, they want it pronto. And if the delay was too long, they'd rather have us shut down business rather than wait for data, information, or prototypes. I was given a company phone that I had to take everywhere with me. Rotating on-call periods, but I'm expected to be available if crap hits the fan. The phone was a special kind of a phone from a fruit company based in California. It wasn't a US-based model, it had 2 different networks and with some extra tech in it, could jump on whichever was stronger, and maybe even use both at the same time. I'm not sure, but it was good. Needless to say, it should have been pretty expensive. Now, I love nature. I can and have gone camping, oftentimes in remote places, and gone a few days without seeing another human. 18 months into the job, there was a new schedule where I got 3 days of being on call and expected to work a regular 8 hours day, having to live within 20 minutes of work, and then 4 days of being off. This worked pretty amazing for me. As soon as next on-call team doing and maintaining the same work from our dep got on, I'd be off. On a plane to get another national park under my belt, or some remote state parks, or whatever I had my sight on. I thought it'd be helpful to carry the company phone I was given, along with me, in case I was needed. In the year and a half I was never contacted when not being on call, as we had a strong culture of communications and the teams knew what they had to know in order to troubleshoot. But nevertheless, I took the company phone along with me. During the trip, the screen got damaged. Not so much that the phone was inoperable, but definitely difficult to use. Got back, went through the forums and got IT to repair or give me another one. Some manager high up in IT went off and was going on and on and on about how expensive those devices were, how difficult it was to configure them, and how much harder it was to get them in US and all other BS. Then she told me, I am not to take the company phone and hardware along with me wherever I go. It is supposed to go between my residence and the office, and nowhere else. And she was pretty derogatory about it, even throwing a few large chunks of racism in between. I shot off an email later, keeping my manager in the loop and the department head, about confirming what she said. Cue my malicious compliance. A few weeks later, I took my PTO. PTO policy was pretty good, and thus I took off for 3 weeks and still had over 3 weeks remaining. I did not take any of the company hardware along with me. As per what was stated by some manager who was somewhere in the organization chart in IT and decently high up. All hands on deck situation arose. My manager was pissed at me not being able to answer the company phone. Wasn't like I was in the woods at my very dear cousin who just had twins and a very difficult delivery. I took care of my cousin while her husband looked after the kids. Manager had to get me on my own phone, and she had to go through some of my work friends for my personal phone, since I was pretty good at not giving out my personal contact info to people at work. Manager, why aren't you answering the company phone? Me, I'm not at home. Don't have my company phone with me. Manager, never mind, get back online immediately, we have an all hands on deck situation. Me, sorry, I do not have any of the company hardware with me. Manager, being mouthy, why, a bunch of expletives. Me, this manager in IT, said I wasn't to take company hardware along with me wherever I go. Manager, what, when did that happen? Me, I sent an email stating what she said and kept you and X, our department head, in CC. Manager, goes through her email, finds it and a bunch of more expletives, you need to come back immediately. Me, sorry, no can do. My cousin's still pretty much half unalive with a very difficult twin pregnancy. I'm taking care of her, and I was pretty clear about it before going on PTO. I wouldn't be able to come back. Manager, cuts off call, calls me back in 30. Manager, do you have anyone who has keys to your apartment? Me, yes. Manager, give me their contact. I'm going to get the computer and a screen and UVW other hardware shipped to you before night and you can get back. We have a serious situation. Me, can I get more PTO then to compensate for this intrusion? Me, knowing I have the slightly upper hand and striking when the metal's hot. Manager, sure, I'll send an email approving this. By 8 p.m., I get my company phone, computer, and other hardware shipped to me. I also get 2 emails. One email approving the extended PTO for this intrusion. Second email from my department head X, stating that the original company policy is still in effect. In fact, a new policy has been put in place for some employees to have their company hardware with them, even on PTO. Anything else said by anyone else was to be disregarded. And cherry on top, that IT manager was in CC. When I returned from my PTO, that IT manager was nowhere to be seen. Turns out, she had been demoted, she couldn't digest that and quit. The company had to spend over $6K to ship it on the same day and get the hardware to me. For our next story. You need to get your priorities straight now. I'm sending a special shout out to all teachers who are starting the new school year. I was at a training yesterday morning. 24 hours prior, my wife broke her ankle. Pretty badly. Like it had to be reset. I was with her all day that day, and yesterday during the training she was recovering from her surgery while I learned how to use IXL, a math program that's pretty easy to figure out for the most part. The night before the training, my wife and I discussed the financial aspect of missing days, and though I took the day off when she broke her ankle, obviously, we both decided I would go to the aforementioned yesterday's IXL training. I get there a minute early, or 14 minutes late according to the USAF, and situate myself. I open up all the websites they say to, do the Padlet AI welcome page drawing they request of me, and get ahead of the program. The rest of the room is jibber-jabbing as the presenter the other district personnel meander around the room. I see a text from my mother-in-law, and as she's at the hospital with my wife I decide to look at it. Gina, my wife, is asking about my pay. Her phone got an alert about a payment. My Rapid card has an alert that goes to her phone, but her phone died before she could see how much. I decide to log into my access page to see how much and tell her whether we are covered for the deductible that they haven't collected yet. It literally took like 20 seconds to do this, and of course this is when Miss Low Glasses decides to pretend she's my teacher. She pokes me on the shoulder repeatedly. I'm pretty sure she thinks she's tapping me, but it's uber aggressive, and says you need to look at the screen she's showing you. I start to comment back by saying sorry, I was just. When she interrupted me abruptly, shouting enough for God and Satan to hear, you need to get your priorities straight. Enter malicious compliance. I was so embarrassed and pissed at the same time, and pissed. It was totally uncalled for. It was when everyone was jibber-jabbing, and it was to check on an important time-sensitive thing. It made me realize that, yes, I do need to get my priorities straight. I replied just as loudly as I had everyone's ear now, you know what, I do need to get my priorities straight. My wife's in the hospital, I'll be leaving now, and I walked out. The lady looking at me through her lowered glasses scoffed, and the other district personnel pulled her aside and chided her as I walked out. One of my homies yelled out, "Love you, OP, it's gonna be fine," text me as I left. Let's dive into our next story. You can't put a cashier's check on a credit card? Watch me. Back in the late 1990s, I was doing my banking at Solomon Smith Barney, which had a unique credit card. It wasn't a normal credit card or a debit card, it was a true credit card that wouldn't let you spend more than what you had in your checking account. This meant the money was earmarked but not deducted until the due date. One day I needed a cashier's check for $1,500 and went to a branch of my personal bank, rhymes with Bell's Bargo, across town, not Solomon Smith Barney. I had to go to the customer service desk and requested a cashier's check, planning to pay with my Solomon Smith Barney credit card. The lady at the desk, who was not particularly kind, snapped at me saying, "You can't put a cashier's check on a credit card." I understood her reasoning, but her attitude was unnecessary. Desperate to get the cashier's check, I argued a bit, but she was adamant and almost seemed to enjoy my predicament. Then she asked if there was anything else she could help with. Cue malicious compliance. I slid my credit card back to her and asked for a cash advance of $1,500. Back then, they used the old manual credit card imprint machines, so she had to go through the tedious process of imprinting my card, getting the paperwork approved, and doling out the cash. Once I had the $1,500 and $100 bills in my hand, she asked if there was anything else she could do. I said yes, I need a cashier's check for $1,500. She started to repeat her earlier refusal, but stopped mid-sentence when she realized I now had the cash. Dumbfounded, she had no choice but to process my cashier's check. I walked out with the check in hand, feeling very satisfied with outsmarting her and getting what I needed despite her initial refusal. It's a story I've cherished for decades. On to the next story. You must use the self-checkout. Yes sir, but it's not going to work. I was at a local gas station and it has a self-checkout system. It also takes food stamps. The rule is you have to go to the register, not the self-checkout, to use the food stamp card. I was there today with a food stamp card getting me some lunch, and the guy was manning the self-checkout. It came to my turn, and the following conversation happened. Cashier, come on up. Me. Oh, I've got to use the register, I've got. Cashier, no, you can use the self-checkout now, come up, you're wasting time. Me, sir, I have a foo. Cashier, you must use the self-checkout, come up now or leave. Me, yes sir. I walked up and scanned my items and tried to use my food stamp card, and like I knew it would, it did not work. Cashier, what the heck is going on with this dumb thing? Me, showing him my card. Sir, I was trying to tell you I have a food stamp card, I have to use the regular register. Cashier, come over here and let's get this over with, next customer can use this one. I walked over, paid for my items and left. All I could do is walk out the door and laugh. Our last story for today. Finance department at work held firm on max per day for meals while traveling. They messed with and denied me reimbursement for $30. Ended up costing them $750. Many years ago, during a corporate merger, I was responsible for transitioning a portion of business operations to a distant city. I was there for 4 weeks in an extended stay suite hotel with fridge and microwave. I had a meal allowance of $50 per day and was required to submit a weekly expense report with receipts for reimbursement. After a long day, all I wanted was to get comfy, chill out, and fix something in the room to eat. On day 1, I shopped at the local market spending $80 and day 4 $20. I submitted my weekly receipts for a total of $100 and was told I had exceeded the daily limit and my reimbursement would be $70 versus $100. Finance insisted that $50 per day in receipts is max they would pay, even as I pointed out that the total was less than a third of what I could have submitted. They stood firm and refused to budge from the daily max. At the time, my most favorite coffee beans were only available for purchase in coffee shops located in select areas of the country. As luck would have it, there was one close by. The name included cafe as they also sold sandwiches, etc., and the receipt was not itemized. Yep, you guessed it, the last 3 weeks, I bought bags of coffee beans every single day. In their effort to short me $30, it ending costing them $750. Classic example of a company being penny wise and pound foolish and jerking employees around. In spite of incredibly attractive financial offers to relocate and remain with the company, I resigned once the transition was complete. Shortly thereafter, I ended up in my dream job for the next 25 years. My position was a new one and just beginning to emerge within the industry. As such, I had tremendous leeway in defining the role and budget. I was respected, my work was valued, and my professionalism and judgment were trusted. I've always been that way. You won't question and nickel and dime me over nonsense, I will respond likewise. If I receive respect and trust, I will have your back and will damn near unalive myself delivering the best I have to offer. I'll adjust my schedule, burn the midnight oil. Whatever it takes. All because I know that once we get through it, I'll take some time for myself, and no one will question my schedule or work ethic. And those are all the stories we have for today. See you tomorrow.